This episode of Instant Analysis is brought to you by Platinum Storage Group and Real Estate Investments. For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for Instant Analysis of Day 10 of the Todd McNair NCAA trial. We got a lot of action today. We got kind of a sandwich of depositions and then a live testimony. So we finished the video deposition of Roscoe Howard, who was an observer, a non-voting member of the COI. It was his first time listening in on a hearing. And then we heard in person the testimony of Brian Halloran, who was a public member of the COI, and he actually had a vote on the committee. And then, kind of a surprise to us, we heard the first hour of the video deposition of Mark Emmert, the NCAA president currently. So it was a lot of day, jam-packed with stuff. What were your general takeaways before we get into it?
Well, I think with Roscoe, I think pretty much everything that we were going to know about Roscoe had already happened yesterday. And I think today was, and there were references during the day to Roscoe, I think especially with Brian Halloran, and mostly it was, well, that's Roscoe, he's just, that's how, he's vociferous, he's a bulldog, maybe it's kind of like, well, you can't exactly tell him, what to do or whatever. And so I think they tried to kind of rehabilitate Roscoe by just saying, oh, nobody paid that much attention to Roscoe. I think that was their best strategy there, and just to get away from Roscoe. And then with Brian Halloran, my best takeaway on Brian Halloran, the Los Angeles lawyer who was on this committee, who for years I've been trying to figure out, how did he get on the committee? What was he doing there? How did Brian Halloran, who doesn't have almost any profile in Los Angeles, well, as it turns out, he's got a wind farm out near Riverside, and he was a lawyer, but it turns out his wife was a law professor at the University of Oklahoma, where a longtime member of the committee and a longtime chairman of the Committee on Infractions both were at the law school. And so he got to know those people, and they got him on the Committee on Infractions. So we got an answer there. He came by way of Oklahoma. And it's kind of a Big 12 deal. You've got a couple of guys from the University of Missouri, a guy from the University of Kansas. You got Brian Halloran, LA lawyer by way of Kansas. And I think his wife teaches at Pepperdine now, which I'm guessing is what got him out here. But we got to see something. You'll probably, we'll go back and talk about those. And then Mark Emmert, we're not sure. We didn't hear that he was going to be on the schedule for today, but maybe because he's probably the shortest deposition that we've got, maybe they thought they might be able to get him finished today, and I think we still got a half hour. But I think he was much more generic about in general and not all that terribly specific. So I think his testimony could have gone in at any time. So they chose to go with him today. So it was kind of an interesting day. I think the more they get into a day like today, where they basically just go over all of the NCAA manual and the hearing and all of that with people who weren't directly involved and incriminated by their emails, it becomes not a terrible day for the NCAA. They lost some points, but they got through it without what happened with the first three witnesses.
Bringing it back to Roscoe Howard, I thought the interesting point that come out of the last kind of hour was that Bruce Burlett, the lawyer for Todd McNair, brought up the contradiction of if the committee says Todd McNair lied as much as he did, why are they then taking pride in the fact that they only gave him a 1-year show cause? Why not give him more? That contradiction there, he kind of pressed in, and I didn't think we got a great answer from Roscoe Howard.
No, and Brian Halloran followed up with when they said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rank the penalty for Todd McNair? And he said, a 2. So the storyline basically is, we really didn't come down on Todd McNair that hard at all, and there was no connection between what happened with Todd McNair and the USC penalties. So that's the storyline, and if you don't have them in writing probably saying that's not the case, that's what they're going to say, and they're going to stick to it. But yeah, there is no good answer. If Todd McNair is the guy that Shep Cooper described and Rodney Uphoff described and Roscoe Howard described when they kept saying, you've got to hammer him, you can't then just say just let him walk away with what they say is a very minor penalty, and you can come back from it, and it's no big deal, and all of that. A contradiction that has not been resolved, no question.
Mm-hmm. As far as Brian Halloran goes, I thought he appeared as a credible witness. I think he appeared as a nice guy coming off to the jury. He also was the quickest testimony, so he was kind of in there and out. The two main things I think to come out of his testimony was that he thought that the TV ban, the proposed TV ban that they say was a compromise for the later penalties for Todd McNair for USC, he said that the TV ban was never taken seriously. The other thing that came out of his testimony is that he admitted that there is a possibility that the photo with Todd McNair and Lloyd Lake could be doctored and it could be cropped. And it's not the original photo as well.
Right, and he didn't, he said that, nobody raised any questions about it, so I just took it for whatever they told me, but he said it was obvious, it was a copy. Yeah. And then with, I thought even when he was giving away points a little bit, like on the TV ban, I mean, he just kind of scoffed at that because they said, well, here's a letter that says we're not considering the TV ban. Hey, what did you think about that? And he said, I don't even pay almost any attention to it at all because we weren't, and nobody would. Because Bruce Boylett brought up the issue of how you would be punishing Notre Dame and NBC and every Pac-12 team. If you took away USC TV games from those schools, they're losing millions of dollars. And I think Brian Halloran said something about, oh, that's from so long ago. He said, nobody's even mentioned that on how many, a decade of the NCAA Committee on Infractions. He said, sure, they might say every penalty, including the death penalty, is still on the list of possible penalties. But he said, you don't take that seriously. Yep. And so he kind of agreed with when Bruce said on the first look through at the maybe potential penalties that had 18 penalties, there was no TV ban on there. And he said, yeah, no, there wasn't, and it wasn't going to be on there. So I think the one thing that hurts, I think, the NCAA a little bit is they've brought the TV ban up a couple of times. And if I'm sitting in the jury, I think, why are they bringing that up? Because their own people are saying it wasn't serious. Yeah. I don't think it helps. You're talking about credibility? I think attorneys have to have credibility too. Yeah. I'm not sure that helps the NCAA attorneys' credibility if they keep bringing up the TV ban. I think nobody believes it, and they probably shouldn't keep bringing it up.
Mm-hmm. But as far as credibility goes, how do you think Brian Halloran appeared to the jury?
I think he came across like, I'm just trying to do a job. I'm a big sports fan. I love what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm just trying to do the best I could. I thought he came across better than some of the stuff you kind of have a sense about. I thought he came across better than you kind of have a sense of, because he clearly was in the middle of some of those emails where they were asking his opinion or whatever, and you're wondering, well, and he kind of said, nah, that was just, if they wanted to do that, I wasn't for it. I wasn't, encouraging them. I just said, go pass it on to Paul D. and let him decide. So I thought he handled most of his stuff pretty well, except for the couple of givebacks. And then he's just adamant that the McNair penalties had nothing to do with USC's penalties, which I think most people probably find that hard to believe.
Mm-hmm. With Mark Emmert's video deposition, we got more clarity on Shep Cooper. Shep Cooper was the guy who wrote the morally corrupt email about Todd McNair. He gave us more details of what happened to Shep Cooper for writing those types of emails.
Yeah, that was actually, this trial made news because a couple of weeks ago when, the NCAA didn't want to allow Emmert to be deposed, and then the decision was no, he has to be deposed. And so when he's deposed, he says that, the question is, did somebody like Shep Cooper suffer any consequences as a result of some of the stuff that happened in the USC case? And he said, well, yeah, he did. That they had created a new position of managing director, I guess, of the Committee on Infractions. And Shep Cooper was the liaison, and he was pretty much kind of that guy. and he was up for that position, and he didn't get it. And he's now reporting to someone in that position where he was the boss in the past. And so there were consequences, Emmert said, and that, the emails he wrote, Emmert would not agree that he was trying to coordinate an effort to influence the committee. He wouldn't go there.
That Shep Cooper wasn't.
Shep Cooper was trying to do that with Uphoff and Howard. But he did say he shouldn't have sent those emails, and that was not the kind of language, and he shouldn't be an advocate. But he wouldn't agree that the three of them together were trying to influence the committee. And I think that's clearly the case that Todd's attorneys are pushing, that those three influenced it and changed the result as a result, because I think they portrayed it today as, well, what if you have a committee where you're kind of split down the middle? You got 4 this way and 4 this way. And then you've got 3 people who come in from the outside and they push on one side. Is that fair? It was split evenly, it seems like, and they couldn't come to a decision for months. And then all of a sudden, boom, the decision goes pretty much really against Todd McNair. How did that happen? We really don't have a good explanation of how it happened or when it happened or even what the exact numbers are. I think we got more numbers from Brian Halloran today where he said it could have been 6-2, could have been 7-1, might have been 8-0. Yeah, well, what was it? I mean, tell us. And that they can't really tell us that or show us what that was. I don't know that helps their credibility, but I think they got through today relatively unscathed, except for a few places.
Emmert maintained that he followed the USC Todd McNair case generally. He didn't really follow it in a detailed way, but when asked if the Committee on Infractions got it right with Todd McNair, he said, I haven't seen anything that would show that the committee erred in their decision. So not necessarily maintaining his quote that he said earlier that the committee got it right. So he didn't directly say one way or the other.
Yeah, and he would say, yes, I have talked to our general counsel about it, and that's where I've been getting information, and no, he hasn't talked to the enforcement staff, no, he hasn't talked to the Committee on Infractions members, but he has talked to the NCAA general counsel, and he sounded like he was giving a very lawyerly answer, and one of those ones that you can't kind of say, if you say, well, I haven't seen any information that would make me think that we got it wrong, instead of saying we got it right. So, I mean, I think that's good lawyering, and he paid attention to it, and I think he was probably, let's say, he was the president of the University of Washington when this was happening. He was paying attention to what was going on at USC and with Reggie. I mean, you just know that. I mean, he is the man. When he was chancellor at LSU, the football coach, because he admitted today he was involved in hiring football coaches and basketball coaches at big schools. Do you know the name of the football coach that he hired at LSU and doubled the salary of every football coach in the SEC? He hired Nick Saban. He was the one that hired Nick Saban out of Michigan State and brought Nick Saban to the SEC. So he knows, I mean, he's been there. He's done this. And he admitted that that's where his attention has been, not so much on matters like Todd McNair, an assistant coach. But my guess is when he was the president of the University of Washington, he was paying attention to USC.
Mm-hmm. Emmert also testified that there was no special effort to review the Todd McNair case and how the committee handled that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, he did right away. He said, well, it happened right before I got there, and we do have processes now to review enforcement cases, infractions cases. Yeah. But he said, it was not ever brought to my attention that there was malfeasance or whatever in that case, and therefore we didn't do it in the Todd McNair case. So, we'll see. I don't know where the accusation of malfeasance must come from. I don't know if it has to be, internal, external. Did it have to come from USC to get them going, or I don't. It wasn't real clear about that. But he says, well, we're doing that now, but we didn't do it in that case.
Yeah. Tomorrow we will hear the rest of Mark Emmert's deposition, and then we believe we'll hear the video deposition of Joe Patuto, who was another member on the COI. What are you expecting from her deposition?
I think we have the last chance of someone from the NCAA's point of view, testifying where it could go wrong for the NCAA. I mean, I think, pay attention to what she has to say. She's really opinionated. She's said a lot of things. They're going to have a lot of her quotes probably to talk about. She didn't write a lot of emails in this case, or as she advised them, she got rid of them. So I don't know that they've got a lot of information like they had on Uphoff and Cooper and Howard, but there's a lot of general information out there, and the fact that she was put on this case specifically because the Pac-12 person on the committee on infractions was not allowed. He had to be recused from the Oregon law professor. So she was put on specifically for the USC case. And so I think she'll probably have to explain some of the things she did in advance of the USC case, some of the things she said. Did she listen to the video or to the Lloyd Lake tapes? Did she say, after hearing Lloyd Lake on a Real Sports episode a couple of years before, did she really say, I think he got it right? We've heard this, but I think we'll see tomorrow, we'll get a chance to see her say that, answer to that, and I'm kind of interested in that.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Day 10 of the Todd McNair NCAA trial. Stick with us for Day 11.